before I move on to some more serious topics, as a personal favorite, I'm a Bond fan, and I know the book focuses about a chapter or at least a couple of pages on your experience auditioning for a Bond film. I really want to, hear it from you. How was that?
It was actually one of the strangest, most surreal, um, tragic, comedic moments of my life, honestly, because I had never in a million years anticipated that I would be considered as a Bond girl. First of all, I, on the other hand, didn't really watch Bond films until recently. I've watched the most recent ones, but this is before that. I wasn't a fan of the franchise. What can I say? It wasn't my thing. I was into like serious cinema. So first of all, um, when I was called in, and this all happened post the release of Water, my film with Deepa Mehta, because it was Oscar nominated. Suddenly, I was on the radar of a lot of Hollywood studios. They were like, "Who's this girl? Let's bring her in and talk to her and audition her and all of that." That's how it works. So when I was brought in to talk potentially about the Bond film, they asked me at the studio, "So, have you seen any of our films?" And you have that moment in your head, that split second where you decide, should I be truthful or should I not be truthful? And I always have these two, voices on either shoulder, truthful or non-truthful. And I decided to just like, what the hell, just be truthful. And I said, no, I've never seen any of your films. I've not really been interested in them. And it really took them aback. I don't know that anyone has gone in to speak to the studio about a Bond film and said, I'm not a fan, I've never seen your films. So it kind of changed the dynamic in the meeting, because he said, well, let's send you some films and let's send you some paraphernalia, and maybe we'll give you a ticket and you should go to one of the private theaters and see that. So they kind of had to shuffle. Anyways, cut to make a very long story short, I ended up making the short list. And there were three girls who were mysteriously, in a very Bond-like fashion, flown out to London to do the final round of auditions with Bond himself, Mr. Daniel Craig. That's when things really got surreal for me. So I was picked up in like a Rolls Royce Shadow from the airport and taken to this beautiful, very premium hotel in the middle of London. And there were, remember, three girls, and we were kind of all kept apart. We didn't know who the other three girls were. I came to know finally, one of the other girls was Olga Kurylenko, and the other girl was the girl who is today Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot was the other woman who was shortlisted. But we never saw each other. It was one of these weird things like sliding doors, like maybe one girl went through one door and the other girl went through the other door, but we never came face to face. So we had a piece that we were supposed to prepare, and actually they were going to film the piece with Daniel Craig. So I had rehearsed, and then the character was supposed to be Latin American, so I did it in a Latin American accent. But what happened is the night before, they sent me a dialogue coach to my room, and she was, with all good intentions, screwed up everything for me, because her take on a Latin American accent was very different from what I had been rehearsing. So all of a sudden the night before, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to speak. What sort of accent do I use, and everything like that. But then I went to sleep, got up the next morning. The Shadow picked me up and dropped me off at the studio. And I walked down this corridor and into the studio, and they had actually constructed a set. Imagine, this is just an audition, but they had constructed a set with like these big boulders and a bridge and everything like that. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So the director came in and greeted me. Barbara Broccoli, who was behind the entire franchise, was very warm, and she was very warm and welcoming. Everybody was amazing. But I had yet to meet Daniel Craig. So they took me into hair and makeup and dressed me up, and I was in this very sort of camouflage gear, chic kind of a thing. I was all ready. I was going through my lines in my head. And then I walked back in the studio, and the man entered. Daniel Craig entered if you can believe it, backlit in silhouette. So I couldn't see him until he was right in front of me. And it was so dramatic. I actually heard like one of the Bond themes in my head as he was walking towards me. And I froze. I just completely lost my nerve. And then he was right up in front of me, those beautiful blue eyes, suave, much smaller and more compact in real life. But I choked. I literally choked. I did not anticipate that I would be like physically traumatized, by my co-star, and I would start like everything was like, I was like, Daniel Craig, it's Bond. Oh my God, going off in my head. But I have to be very, very collected and calm. So he was very gracious and warm. So he said, would you like to rehearse the lines? I said, sure. And we had to go and sit on this boulder that had been constructed. And he put his arm around me and I went, oh my God, I'm melting. I just literally was like losing all control of all my senses. And we rehearsed the lines and then we had a few minutes in between. And he's trying to make small talk because it's a very weird situation, even for an actor, you're sort of in this very intimate kind of position with your co-actor. You don't know anything about them. You've never met them before. Like you're waiting for lighting to be adjusted. What do you do? So, to make small talk, I reached deep into my intellect and I looked down and I saw his shoes and I said, I'm going to talk about how shiny his shoes are. I'm sure that's going to charm him. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, who wants to talk about shiny shoes? I just said, oh, Daniel, your shoes are so shiny. Like, I heard it come out of my mouth and I wanted to like put it back in, but it's out there. Then I had to go on, I was like, what sort of shoe shine do you use? Do you get your shoe shined? Like, blah, blah. And he's I could feel him like stiffen behind me. Like, what is this woman talking about? And everything went downhill from there. Everything. So, on some level, you have to understand that because Daniel Craig is so identified with Bond, he's an executive producer, he has a big say on who he's going to spend the next 6 months of his life with. And I think at that moment, he decided it's definitely not going to be this woman who's discussing my shiny shoes. Like, I don't want to be discussing my footwear before every shot. So I could just feel him kind of drift away from me. So I gave my audition. It went fairly well, but those damn shoes did me in. So obviously, I did not get the role. And Gal Gadot did not get the role as well, so I do not feel that bad.